Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone today to Echo Eternal Horizons Festival and the Rockwood Academy celebration of Anne Kirk and her message of acceptance and diversity. For those of you that don't know, Echo Eternal is committed to raising awareness of the Holocaust and remembering the testimonies of over 100 survivors through artistic performance, education and civic engagement. The Horizons Festival 21 is a nationwide festival that is about remembering the Holocaust and celebrating survivors, looking at their legacy of hope, resilience and respect. We've been looking at Anne Kirk today in our lessons in period 1 on online learning. Every child in Rockwood Academy has had a lesson on Anne Kirk and her message. Anne was someone who experienced persecution of German Jews at a young age, and I think personally that this message of unity and respect is all the more important in this time when we are so far apart from each other and we're having such a difficult situation across the whole world. Okay, so every school, as part of the festival, pledges in the name of one survivor to make sure that their legacy is continued. Rockwood have pledged in Anne Kirk's name to encourage everyone in our community to express themselves as individuals and to celebrate the diverse cultures that exist within our local community. We will do this by running a Cultural Appreciation Day dedicated to highlighting diversity in our school. We're going to hear today from some of the flames at Rockwood Academy who have been listening to Anne's story and who want to remember her legacy. But a little bit more about Anne Kirk first. Anne was born in Berlin in 1928 and her family moved around quite a lot, but she lived a very happy childhood until she was about 5 when the Nazis took control. She experienced the increasing persecution of the Jews in Germany before the outbreak of World War II, and in her testimony speaks about Kristallnacht and the aftermath of that event. Anne's parents applied to emigrate, but they were unsuccessful multiple times. However, they did manage to arrange for her to be sent to live with strangers in England on a kinder transport that went in 21st of April 1939. She was 11. She never saw her parents again, but continued to communicate with her father through letters. However, these letters did cease, and she didn't know for years what had happened to her family. She later found out after the war that they had died. We're going to hear from some of the flames from Rockwood who have been looking at Anne's story, and they're going to tell us a little bit about themselves and why they think being a flame and being part of Echo Eternal is so important. Faiza, do you want to start us off?
My name is Faiza Hussain, and when I joined Echo Eternal, I didn't know much about the Holocaust. And I think it's important now that I'm a Rockwood Eternal flame because I've learned more about myself and the values a person should have in themselves and why it's important to spread the word of Anne Kirk's story and others like her.
My name is Sabrin Kali and I really enjoy being part of the Eternal Flames. It's gave me a lot of confidence through these months that I've been part of one of the Eternal Flames. And I've also learned a lot about the Holocaust. As Faiza said, I didn't really know anything about the Holocaust before, but now it's our time to shine and make sure that nothing happens like this again in the future.
My name is Bushra Dad, and I'm the Eternal Flame. And with Eternal, I learned a lot of things about the Holocaust, and I learned a lot of things that I didn't really think happened. So it just made me more open-minded in everything and made me more confident. I've met a lot of friends too and amazing teachers, and I've made a lot of relationships with other people from different schools through Echo Eternal, and it's just been a really good impact to my life.
Thank you very much, Bushra. We are now going to look a little deeper at Anne's testimony and discuss with the flames why her story speaks to them. So I wanted to start with this question, looking at Anne as a survivor. Although she never experienced a concentration camp, we still call her a survivor, and I'd like to know from Pfizer why you think this is.
Despite Anne never experiencing the concentration camps, her resilience and determination to get through the pain of being separated from her parents made her a survivor. She didn't go to the concentration camps, but it was the fear and the hope that kept her going, and it made her a survivor. The fear in not knowing if she'll be safe and reunited again with her parents, and the hope that she can be a normal family and go back to the place she once called home. From her story, we can learn to never give up because resilience does pay off. And from her story, we can learn that spreading the story can help to stop the spread of hatred and to spread positivity more.
Thank you, Pfizer. That was a really thoughtful answer. I really like your idea of the message of resilience and hope that we can all follow as well. Has anyone got anything they'd like to add to this question, Sabrin or Bushra?
As Pfizer did say, she was very, very young at that age, so it definitely did affect her, and nobody should go through that at the end of the day, no matter if you're older or younger. Nobody should go through that. So her just going through that makes her a survivor because of like the feelings that she felt during that time.
Thinking about this and this idea of what she went through, I want to ask you a little bit about the removal of religious freedoms. Anne experienced the increasing persecution of the Jews and how their rights were gradually taken away. And it's her talking about the events of Kristallnacht and the aftermath that she was experiencing that has stuck with me. I was wondering, Bushra, how you feel, as we are a rights respecting school and we all view the ability to celebrate our own religion as a basic human right. How would you feel if you found your religious freedoms being removed?
I can't imagine how it would have like. It's not something I've ever thought about because I just can't imagine. And I would be devastated because it's like a part of my identity is taken away from me, and it's like they don't care about me. And yeah, it's just really sad. I can't put it into words.
No, thank you. That would be an unimaginable situation for me as well. And I think what you say there about it forming a part of your identity, that must be so traumatic to feel that your own identity is being denied in the place that you call home. Pfizer or Sabrin, have you got anything to add to this question here?
I think that practicing your religion is really important because it develops a better connection between you and your God. And I think, for example, if someone didn't allow me to wear my headscarf, which is a symbol of my religion, I would be speechless because you can't force me to do that. And I can't bear to imagine, like Bushra said, not being able to practice my religion, and it is against my right to have my freedom to express myself.
I wanted to think about this idea of you bring up being speechless and how you would struggle with this situation. And I wanted to think about the effect of living in fear that a child that could have on a child. You know, she was under 10 when she was experiencing these things in Germany, and her parents tried to hide it from her, but she obviously could sense these things happening, as we can tell from her testimony. So, Sabrin, what kind of effect do you think living in fear would have had on a child?
I feel like this would have a really big change on a child's life, especially since she was only like 10 years old. And it was probably one of the first big, horrible events that ever happened to her. I also feel like they would always have to like have a sense of fear and live in fear because they will never know every turn they take what's waiting for them.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we can't imagine the anxiety and the fear that she must have lived with there, especially moving to another country. Bushra, Pfizer, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Sabrin. She just took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of this idea of living in fear, Anne had to move from her home, the only place she'd known, to the UK to live with complete strangers and leave her parents behind. Now, although she didn't think at the time that this separation would be permanent, do you think her departure brought her hope or fear, considering, as you say, this state of anxiety she'd be living in? Bushra, what do you think?
I think she would have hoped that her parents would come, but slowly, like when she gets older, she would gradually realize that her parents wouldn't come, and she would be overwhelmed. And I don't think she would be hopeful, because it's like a hard pill to swallow, if you know what I mean. So I don't think she would have any hope without her parents.
I agree, and I think it's an unimaginable situation. I'm an adult. I can't imagine living without my parents for the rest of my life. And I think you're right. But luckily, I think what we've seen from her testimony is that sense of hope hasn't been diminished, and she does have, a positive message for us. So, Sabrin, you think Anne was lucky? She says that she was lucky, apart from never seeing her parents again and having to be sent away. She said she was lucky. Would you agree?
I definitely agree with that, because she was a very, very, very lucky survivor, as many people have lost their families and other people's lives. So I feel like during that very tragic experience, she was very lucky.
Thank you, Sabrin. Faiza, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Anne was very lucky in the sense that she's here today, but I don't think she was lucky to lose her parents at such a young age, because she had to gain the sense of independence very quickly. And at that age, you don't really expect children to have that kind of independence. And maybe she felt she was on her own. And at that stage, she was very confused mentally, because she didn't really know where she is and how she can express her feelings.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think I can't imagine as a child having to grow up that quickly. And you're right, finding that sense of independence and being quite alone in the world. I want us to take this thing back to Anne's message at the end of her testimony of preaching and raising awareness of the dangers of racial intolerance. And she encourages others to respect each other regardless of race, religion, and nationality. And from this, you all created the pledge that we as Rockwood have promised to do, that in Anne Kirk's name, we are going to encourage our community to express themselves as individuals. And we're going to be running a Cultural Appreciation Day, highlighting the diverse cultures at our school. I want to ask why you made this pledge and what legacy you want to have and leave behind at Rockwood in your time as Flames. Faiza, would you like to start us off?
You've got to treat them as humans, beings with the respect they deserve. This reflects on Anne's wise words. Cultural identity is a huge part of a person's identity, encouraging them to express themselves as unique individuals. We made this pledge to ensure that nobody is discriminated for who they are. Our community is a safe place for all of us to embrace our cultures. We also made this pledge to encourage people to feel safe, and that expressing their culture isn't unsafe. It's a safe place for all, and we'd like to make it feel like that. When I leave Rockwood, I want the future Eternal Flame Fellows to know that they have a voice and all of their opinions count. They are heard. They should never give up, and resilience and determination always pays off.
Thank you, that's wonderful. It's definitely a school and a community that I would like to be part of there. Bushra, Sabrin, would you like to add to what Faiza has said?
I would say we made this pledge because it's like as if it's like a promise to the Holocaust survivors and Anne Kirk that we will try our best to like change like the future and try to influence like our youth and the younger people in like the school and our generation, that we don't need that to happen again. We don't want history to repeat itself. So it's more of a promise that we will try our best to bring justice to them.
As Bushra said, we want to set a good example for the youth and for the other generations that are coming. So we would like to pass this down many generations down to make sure it never ever happens again, because this was a very like unimaginable experience that these survivors had. So we wouldn't want that to ever happen to anybody again.
Thank you. I have to say you all three set a wonderful example, and you've been so thoughtful today with your answers and your consideration of Anne and her message. I think it's time for any questions or reflections from those people that have been watching. I was wondering if Lucy had anything that you'd like to add to our discussion today.
Oh, I really enjoyed that. You've reminded me of stories I'd heard when I was around your age, of survivors in similar situations. But it's really, I'm really inspired by the fact that you've taken a less known survivor. I just wondered how you'd gone about choosing Anne, how you'd picked her, or how you came across her story.
We have covered a range of different survivors. In the core schools, each school has focused on different survivors, and our survivor was Anne Kirk. And at first, we've never heard of her, but now we've learned a lot about her. We understand what she's gone through, and I think from that, we've developed a really strong connection with her.
That's fantastic. I also wondered about your Cultural Appreciation Day. Have you chosen a date for that? And do you have any solid plans for that, or is that all ready for your imaginations to look into?
Because of this whole COVID lockdown, it couldn't really happen. So we just decided to get dressed at home and send our pictures in and something that represents us. And we just wrote a couple of sentences about our culture and what we actually like about it and what's it about. And we just send it in so we can do it virtually. It's up for real life.
Fantastic. Does that mean that maybe next year you'd like to honour its anniversary and do something in person? Or do you think, I'm thinking of your legacy, is it something you think you might like to revisit in the future?
I think the plan is, all things being well, that we will do something in the summer term as a replacement and for the Cultural Day. The girls had some fantastic ideas about finding out what cultures the students are from, having different foods, things from cultures, different dress, and not just raising awareness and educating the other students, but giving people a chance to celebrate where they come from and be proud of it.
That sounds absolutely amazing, and I support a women's group in Bromford who actually have exactly the same idea. They'd love to do the same thing. We've been talking about it for the last 2 years. I think, they'd picked a date when it would be appropriate, but it'd be really fun to share ideas in the future and to feedback on each other and maybe, inspire each other more for that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. We'd absolutely love that. Has anyone got anything else they'd like to add? I think we've had some things put in the chat. Saying, what is it about Anne Kirk's testimony that resonates personally with yourselves? So Sabrin, Bushra and Faiza.
Anne's testimony, there's a lot of things that are very traumatic in it. And I think one of the biggest traumas she's had to face is being separated from her parents in hope, yet not knowing if she'd ever be reunited with them. And I think I personally connect myself with the story through when she was separated from her parents and when she had to rely on herself quite quickly. And I think that she's a very brave individual for going through that all by herself.
Thank you, Faiza. I agree. I think she sounds incredibly brave to me. I have no idea how she did what she did. I've lived abroad in different countries, and by myself, but I was, 21 when I did that. I was not a 10-year-old child. Sabrin, Bushra, have you got anything to add here?
When I was listening to her testimony, she always had like an uplifting tone. So, and like she just radiated a positive vibe, and I like that because it just reminds me of my friends and me. So I feel like yeah, like once I listened to her, it was different. Like when I was reading it off a sheet of paper, and then I actually listened to her talking about her experiences. It just felt more personal. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bushra. Sabrin, have you got anything you'd like to add to what Bushra and Faiza have been saying?
As Bushra said, she was very uplifting in her voice. So although she went through a lot as a young age, or at a young age, now she likes to spread her story about it as like she's proud of it. Like she wouldn't be ashamed of it at all, because at the end of the day, she did survive it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think her hope and positivity is something that we can all work to emulate in our own lives. So thank you for your thoughts today.
I wondered, perhaps if we get a bit sort of political, I'd be interested to know if the girls think that across Britain as a whole, we do enough to remember the Holocaust in schools, but then more broadly, because it's obviously something at Rockwood we try and do a lot of, but is it happening enough more broadly?
I don't think it's happening enough broadly in schools. I think there's been an amazing job, especially in our school, with Core giving us Echo Channel. And on the news, they don't do much. I think they should put discussions on and maybe ask more of the public what their opinions and thoughts are. And I don't think some people are educated well enough. And that's because one of the things of Holocaust denial, and maybe that's why people aren't educated enough about this topic.
Hi, Miss Doherty. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, we've been having a really good conversation here with the girls.
Yeah, and do you know what? The Bushra, Sabrina, and Faiza, you've been absolutely amazing. But do you know, I'd like to ask you a really key question in terms of there's so many key messages and lessons that you've talked about that have been learnt through the testimony. Now, how will you become really proactive activists in the future? And just to kind of like clear up activist meaning, how will you implement change in the future? So not just short term in the next year, but how will you continue to implement change in your lives from the lessons that you've learnt?
I think there's various different ways we can implement change. For example, we could post things on our social media platforms that promote less hatred and more love and caring towards each other. And I also think we could stop hate by not fighting with anyone or arguing with people. And maybe before we start an argument, we can reconsider if it really is worth arguing over, and we should learn to accept each other and to forgive.
And how, Faiza, do you take that message beyond your peers? So let's think about on a local level or a national level or an international level. How would you make your voices be heard around the lessons that you've learned from these testimonies?
We could tell our family and friends, and maybe to take it nationally. Maybe it's something we can give to the news reporters, maybe like post a comment on social media, direct at them so they pay attention to us.
Okay, I think I'm going to end this meeting now. I wanted to thank people for coming, and Sabrin, Bushra and Faiza, thank you so much for your contributions and the really thoughtful, fantastic things you had to say about Anne and her story, and what we can take away from it. Thank you, everybody.
I really do hope that my story will help you to understand what happened in Germany from 1933 to 1945, and that will help you to understand what terrible dangers lie in racial intolerance. You know, whatever color, whatever religion, your friends, your neighbors, or even strangers are, they're all human beings. And you've got to treat them as human beings with the respect they deserve. Now, I know this sounds a very serious subject, but please, I implore you, do think about it.